Thank you, Tina, for introducing me. It's great to see you all here today. Thanks for coming. You were going to come anyway, I'm pretty sure. I've taught over 100 public speaking courses during my tenure. And as Tina said, I have been a personal trainer, but every day I use my public speaking skills in whatever I'm doing. And it's all about being prepared, being confident, expressing yourself, and knowing what you're going to talk about. So today I'm going to talk about having the skills to speak to an audience and having the tools in your toolkit to be able to do that. According to most studies, Jerry Seinfeld said, people's #1 fear is public speaking. #2 is death. This means to the average person, if you go to a funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy. This is funny, but mostly true. A lot of us are terrified to get up in front of a room of people to talk. Even if you're a writer, and you guys are all writers, so you know how to write, you know how to communicate, at least on paper, right? But you need to learn maybe a little bit more how to speak in front of a group of people about you and about your books, about your thoughts. So this might be important for you today. So maybe if you are nervous about getting up in front of an audience of strangers or even your peers, you need to practice, all right? But the real key to successful speaking is your preparation, okay? If you're prepared, you may still be a little nervous, but nervous means you care, right? That you want to do a good job. But if you're prepared, you're practiced, then you will be more successful. So today I'm going to give you some tips and tools to be prepared for those speeches, big or small, that you might be called upon to make. So let's get started. So please ask any questions as I go along. If you'd like, just say, hey, Lisa. All right. So today's agenda, I'm going to talk about the introduction to giving a speech, your speech delivery, how do you give the speech, vocal aspects, you know, how you can use your voice to speak effectively, and then body language, how you move, how you gesture, the nonverbal behavior. And then we'll look at the basic speech outline, which we'll already be tapping to with the intro to the speech. And then I'll answer any questions that you have. All right? So let's get started. Okay, when you're going to introduce your topic, your book, maybe when you're doing your 4.5-minute presentation, you can use this structure. First of all, you need to have an attention getter. That includes a rhetorical question. Does anybody know what a rhetorical question is? It's one where you do not have to answer it directly, but something for you to think about. It's a way to capture the audience's attention by asking a question such as, what would you do if you won the lottery? Okay, or have you ever thought about where you'd be if you grew up on a farm? Of course, my questions and your questions have to relate to what you're going to be talking about. So you have to think about, well, how can I make this relevant to my audience? Okay, so those are simple. You can be really creative with that and make people think about what you're going to be talking about. Okay? Now, the next point is, and I hope you can read this, it's not as big as it could be. I guess I can see it. Thesis. This is going to be capturing the main idea that you are going to speak about. So get right to it. Tell them what you're going to be talking about. What is it, particularly your book, that you want to get into? The title of your book, for starters, and any more details that will come up when we talk about the speech outline. Okay, so that's your thesis. The next element is the motivation. You want to motivate your audience to listen. Why should they listen to what you have to say? Okay, so once again, it does get back to relevance. Why would we care to hear about what you have to say? For example, the information I'm going to present to you today could be useful for you if you ever wanted to be more confident in any social situation. Okay? That's what I'm providing relevance to you. But of course, one of the first things I want to talk about is that you need to know who your audience is. Who's coming to listen to you speak? Who's going to the website to listen to you? I know who you are. I asked Tina several times, well, who's coming? Who are these people? They're writers, okay. You know, a general idea of who you are. So I know how to speak to you and craft my speech directly to you as best I can, okay? You don't have to be very particular, but you want to have a general idea who's coming to listen to you talk, okay? Do you know who that's going to be for you next week?
People interested in buying a book because
Right.
I'll be at Barnes & Noble.
Right.
And I just approach them and say, good morning or good afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
You look like somebody that might need to buy a book.
I love that. That's great. All right.
In a bookstore.
Right, right. Okay. And you come up with those ideas, and you might be thinking about that right now, as you already have. All right. So knowing your audience is very important. I've spoken to many types of groups. I've been a public speaker in the classroom. I've given lectures in other settings, but I also want to know the size. How many people am I talking to? Is it 15 or 12? So Tina gave me a rough sketch of how many people are coming, that it was going to be relatively casual, but I've also been in a formal setting with, 100 people in the room with a bigger space. So how big of a space are you going to be in? What is the lighting like? What is the sound like? So those are all the things you need to check out, perhaps even before you walk in to do your presentation or wherever you are at your bookstore. What does that bookstore look like to you? Have you been to that Barnes & Noble? Okay, so you know it, and you know the space that you're going to be in. So that all makes you more comfortable and ready to be able to speak. Okay, another thing I didn't point out on here that's part of the introduction is noting your credibility. For example, already, Tina introduced me with some of my experience and knowledge, but also I did briefly as well because I just tacked on because she already did most of it. But who are you? What is your education? What is your knowledge and experience so you can talk about this? Obviously, you're the writer, so you wrote this book, but what are your maybe years of experience that you've been working on that? What is your background in your spiritual experience and exploration? So that's going to add and fill out who you are and why somebody might be drawn to listen to what you've written about. Does that make sense? I'm sure you would have that on your blurb of your book, right?
Mine, I usually, they go, well, what's it about? I go, basically it's devotions, but I bring in the fact that I've been a nurse for over 50 years.
Yes.
And there's a lot in there about how God helped me make it through the shifts.
Yes.
And about our tiny baby and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So use your personal, very subjective experience to draw on and your perspective. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so preview. The preview is just what it is. You're going, the thing about speeches is you're going to talk about what you're going to talk about, then you're going to talk about what you're talking about, and then at the end you're going to talk about what you just talked about. So it's repetitive, it's reinforcing, but it reminds your audience where you're going, and then where you're at, and then where you've been. So it's just a roadmap to follow and get a structure of what you're talking about. Okay. So pauses are good. It helps you get your thoughts together. We talk about transitions. Transition is a sentence that you're going to make that tells your audience where you're going. All of a sudden, my skirt just came unzipped. Excuse me. I was trying to figure out what's going on. It's a complete sentence that connects with what you are saying with what's happening next in your speech. Once again, that roadmap. So, for example, I'm talking to you about this introductory points of the speech, and then next I'm going to talk more about the vocal aspects of the speech. Okay, so that's my transition statement. Okay. So the vocal aspects, using your voice, literally, because you have used your voice in writing, right? You have your own voice, right? Everybody's got their own individual style, the way they write, the same way with the way you speak. All right, and one of the first elements is projection. Now, I don't have a problem with projection, but some people might. It's all about speaking loudly enough for the entire audience to hear clearly. All right? I don't know if you have that capability or not. Maybe if you're doing something recorded, that's different, but if you're in a room, can everybody hear you? For example, there are people back here, but I can talk louder than them. But I know that I have to be a little bit louder because of that. Now, how does that happen? I need to breathe from my diaphragm. Instead of up here, I need to put my fingers on my abdomen and think about taking a deep breath in and then pushing the air out and using that air to expend and push that sound out. All right, so the other thing you can do before you speak is to do a vocal warm-up. So we're going to do some other vocal things in just a moment, but right now we're going to talk about a warm-up. So first of all, I want you to take a few seconds and go, mm. Okay, you can stop. And you go, ooh. Okay, and now I want you to yawn. Okay, yawn and stretch your mouth out. Okay, good. All right. Okay. So anyway, breathing from your diaphragm, putting your fingertips there, exhaling, push it out, and think about speaking from down here. Will send your voice across the room. However, now I've been criticized about this. Avoid speaking too loudly. Some people do. I do have a problem. There are people that I work with that are like, Lisa, can you be quieter? No, I can't. I was a drama major. It's really hard. But you only increase the volume if it makes sense. Okay, so you can play with your volume, and I'll talk about that in just a moment as well. The other thing that's important is articulation. That's about pronouncing your words clearly. Okay, you can overdo it as well, but I have no problem with articulation. How many of you can speak fairly clearly that we can hear your words? Okay. Well, I'll hear from you in just a moment then. So we're going to talk about tongue twisters. Now, you got a sheet of tongue twisters on one of the handouts, and yes, and the first one at the top says, the lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue, the tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips. Who wants to say that out loud together? Yeah. Or let's have individuals. Yes. Okay. I want to hear.
I want to learn this.
Okay.
The lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue, the tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips.
There you go. All right, before I move on, yeah, so you want to think about your lips, your tongue, your teeth, your jaw, and the roof of your mouth. So use all that part of your mouth. Okay, who else wants to try that? Anybody?
The lips, the
yes.
teeth, the tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips.
Okay, very good. Now we're going to try two more. The one I want to go to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the seventh one down, where it says a big black bug. Okay, I'll say it first, and you can try it. Now, it's not about speed, it's about clarity and making sure you can hear every word. So you have to speak slow enough to get every word correctly. A big black bug bit a big black bear, and the big black bear bled blood. This black bug bled blue black blood, while the other black bug bled blue. Now, how about the first two sentences? Try the first two sentences. Who wants, no, read it first. Read it first to yourself and then say it out loud.
A big black bug bit a big black bear, and the big black bear bled blood.
That's good. Okay, that's all I want. That's just for two sentences. Anybody else want to try that? Okay, good. Thank you.
A big black bug bit a big black bear, and the big black bear bled blood.
There you go. But that's good. That's good. Anybody else want to try it?
I guess I'll try.
Okay, try that, and then we'll do one more.
A big a big black bug bit a big black bear, and the big black bear bled blood.
That's very good. All right, so we're going to go to one more, which is the last one, and then you can help read that. Whether the weather be cold or whether the weather be hot, whatever the weather, we'll weather the weather, whether we like it or not.
Oh, that's
Isn't that fun? You can try it. Do it slow enough, but keep a good pace. You decide.
whether the weather be cold or whether the weather be hot. Whatever the weather, we'll weather the weather, whether we like it or not.
Yes. That's one of my favorite tongue twisters from way, way back. But these are the kind of things that you can do to practice before you get up to speak. It just warms up the way you articulate, as well as the other things. So already we have projection, breathing well, and you could do breathing exercises, and then start doing tongue twisters. You can do any of these. Are fun. Some of them are harder than others. A box of biscuits, a box of biscuits, and a biscuit mixer. I mean, they're tough, but it makes you slow down to make sure you're not under-articulating or over-articulating. So it gives you practice. Yes. Yes.
When I was singing, I learned to emphasize ending consonants.
Yes.
Like instead of a black bear, I sort of swallowed that K. Black bear.
You swallowed the K?
The first time.
Oh, I see.
Black bear, black bear.
Yeah.
Black bear.
Black bear. Yeah, some of the best singers that we know, they are really good at articulation. Now, sometimes the kids these days, you can't understand anything they say. I mean, I won't name names, but there's some that I don't know what they said because I can't understand the words. What did you say? I'd like to know what you said, but if you don't help me, I can't understand you. So, all right. So the other element that we can now talk about is pace. You want to vary the speed of speech to emphasize points and maintain audience interest. So that means you don't want to be monotonous in your delivery. You don't want to be you want to vary the speed at which you speak. And that means oftentimes putting pauses in there. Okay, pauses are important. Pauses get you to that point where people start listening. Deliberately stopping to emphasize a point or give the audience time to absorb the information. That's going to slow you down as well and pace yourself.
Also, may I ask you a question?
Oh, yes.
With the pauses, like you said, some of the speakers will tend to say That's not good, correct?
Correct. Correct. You do, yeah, that's why you have to practice pausing and practice your speech. So when you get to a point where you feel like you don't know what you're going to say and you put a word in like or don't do that. I mean, try not to. I remember when I taught public speaking for a zillion years, I would record all the students' speeches and I would start counting all the and the ers and the and those are, not pretty to listen to. That's correct. They're filler words. So you want to learn how to pause without saying anything. Pauses, and I think this is an issue in social beings, that we don't like pauses when we communicate with other people because we feel awkward, especially with new friends. It's like you got to fill in the blank. You got to fill in the quiet. But sometimes pausing can be very effective. People will listen. Okay? So a way to think about when you're going to pause in your speech, particularly if you're going to write it up, which I would recommend, have note cards. I have little note cards. And if you have a tendency to not know when to pause, you can put a hash mark on points where you want to pause, maybe at a comma, certainly at the end of a sentence. And that will remind you to take a breath and pause, because you might be nervous anyway and you just want to rest a second. This is a way to break down where you'll pause and take a breath. Here's an example today. Pause. I'd like to talk to you, pause, specifically pause, about speaking. But I just did that, hash marks for myself. Try to breathe, pause, and not insert those filler words. So that takes practice. The more you know your material, the better you'll be at that. And that also reminds me, as I segue, that's just paper, so I'm going to throw, is when we do a public speech, oh, thank you, you didn't have to do all that.
Oh, that's okay. I need to exercise.
Yeah, there you go, good, bend over. Public speaking, we talk about being extemporaneous. Have you ever heard of that, extemporaneous speaking? That is where you appear like you're just talking, like you're having a conversation, right? Does it appear that I'm just talking to you? Kinda, yes. That's what I want to show you, that I'm well prepared, and I've done my research. I'm organized. I've practiced my delivery, but I appear that I'm just saying this for the very first time. And every time you speak, it's going to be slightly different. I hope so, that you're not that rigid in the way you speak. And there's my didn't mean to do that. But this gentleman was saying earlier, what was your name?
Ray.
Was
Oh,
Ray?
Ray, yeah.
Were you the one that said you get better at it the more you do it? Or was that somebody else?
Somebody else said that.
Okay. I was just going to attribute it to you.
You can take the credit.
Oh, maybe it was the bookstore owner. That's who it was. He said he at first felt very nervous about speaking, but the more he did it, the easier it got. Yeah. So if you're going to do those little 4.5-minute snippets, that's a good practice. That's excellent practice. And you can do that a zillion times and record the best one, and you will get better at it. Yes. Yes.
I think that the best time to pause is right before an applause.
Before applause?
Right before applause.
If you're lucky. If you're lucky. You are presumptuous.
Or if you pause, maybe they will applaud.
I know. You're just going to wait for it. Yes. Were you going to say something? Okay. So you want to rehearse your speech. You want to develop a conversational style. If possible, you might want to rehearse in front of others and get some feedback. All right? If you have a good friend that's not going to be too cruel, but will be honest and give you some pointers, and you want to be better at this, then do that. You might want to record and listen to a timed version of yourself speak, especially if you're going to do these 4.5-minute little ditties, so to speak. Listen to yourself. Now, is it easy to listen to yourself? No. We were just talking about that earlier. I do not like to listen to myself. I don't even want to look at myself. But it's so funny, when I did my public speaking for my students, they had to record themselves, and it was videotaped. Well, I recorded them, and then they had to go watch themselves. And that is painful, especially the first time. And then you go, okay. But that's the only way you can improve, to see what you're doing. I'm sure you've done that with editing your books, right? Somebody's going to tear it all apart. And you have to do editing and editing and editing. Same way with this. You want to be terse, you want to be concise, you don't want extraneous materials, and you just want to stay focused. All right. Yes.
And it's also good to keep it simple, right?
Yes.
Because I have a tendency myself, I've noticed that I go on and on and on when I'm trying to make a point.
Yes.
He's editing my book, so he knows what I'm talking
Ah,
about.
yes.
And
Yes.
so it's hard because you're trying to get the point across and maybe it's redundant, but
Right.
you say it differently each time you write about it.
That's
and
correct.
then you go back and look at it and say, well, what's the best way?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
In
then
fewer words,
in fewer words.
concise. That's the same. Well, you do that in writing, so you should be able to do that in speaking too.
Everything you have about one subject at one time, rather than hit it here and then come back and hit it here again and here again and here again.
Right.
You might do that once or twice.
Right.
But if you drag it out,
Yeah.
again and again, it's not good.
Right.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's to make a point, get your point across.
Right.
You know, and
Well,
Yes, but when you're writing, you don't. When people talk, they say the same thing over and over and all the time to make their point. But when you're reading it, you don't want to hear it.
Again.
It's there. I can
Yeah.
reread it. You don't have to keep telling
well,
me.
for
over and over.
emphasis only.
right.
Emphasis only, you repeat it.
It depends on the context.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You have much to say, but I wanted to ask, how do you invite your audience to respond to you so that you're not just talking and leaving?
You're talking about response verbally?
Yeah. Say in a situation, you can't do it on the radio, but if you're in a group of people like this.
Well, that's, as I said earlier, you can ask a question during,
Yeah, well, Lisa kind of did that when she invited y'all to ask questions.
yes,
She got you to interact with her.
correct. So you have to tell them that.
Or you can have people do tongue twisters.
That's correct, just to amuse themselves and break it up. So, of course, pausing is best after the introduction of your speech, and then once you get into the body of your speech, we'll look at the outline briefly in just a little bit. And then between each main point, each type of point that you're going to talk about, you can pause before you move on. Then people will see those segues or hear those segues. And you might want to pause before a punchline or the conclusion of your speech. So that's pausing. Now we're going to, I missed. So I went out of order. We talked about pace. Now I want to talk about pitch, all right? I moved it around. All those P's. Okay, pitch is also very important. That's almost the musical level of your voice. Some of us have really deep voices. Some of us have very high-pitched voices. Obviously, we don't really want to be at those extremes unless it's intentional for a dramatic effect. How many of you consider you have a low-pitched voice? I thought you might, because you were just nodding your head. And you do too, yeah. You're probably somewhere in the middle. You're a little low, yeah. Have any of you been singers in choir? Yeah.
I find when I talk, my voice by and large is not low. But when I begin talking, I find I drop my voice and I begin talking like this. I don't know why.
That's interesting.
But
Do people
it
hear
slows me
you?
down.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
In my normal talking voice.
Right. Okay. Well, you have to be aware of your pitch. You know, you don't want to be too high where you sound, it's uncomfortable to hear, or too low where we can't hear you. But, however, it's good to vary the pitch to make you not sound monotonous. I've talked about a monotone before. I mean, people can put you to sleep if they have a monotone voice and they never change their pitch or their pace. So they're exactly the same, and then you will fall asleep. So we don't want that. So pitch can be changed by thinking about emphasis. What words do you want to emphasize of the sentences you're going to speak? For example, I'm going to use the sentence here. I went to the grocery store today. Sounds pretty simplistic sentence, but which word I'm emphasizing will change also the meaning of the sentence. I went to the grocery store today. 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 And I went to the grocery store today. Now that's going to change the meaning, but it's also going to change your pitch. So you decide what is the meaning of the sentences you have and where are you going to put the emphasis of that, your voice on. So that's going to be something to consider as well. How many of you have spoken in public? You all have. So go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Yeah.
I should have asked
the
that before.
pitch determines how well you pitch your book.
Truth. And you have to be passionate about that and excited about it. If you're not excited about it, they're not going to be. So that's another thing to consider. How many feel that you have a voice that sounds interesting? You do. I already know you do. I hear your voice, and you do too. But I haven't heard everybody speak. So that's important, that people want to listen to you and that you sound interesting, that you don't have that monotone voice. But it's easier for you, most likely, because you love what you're talking about. This is your passion, right? So you're going to talk about the thing that you love and that you want to promote and that you've spent a lot of time on. Okay, so that makes a big difference too. Any questions so far? Okay. All right, so now that we've talked about vocal aspects, we're going to talk about, we already did tongue twisters, we're going to talk about body language. Okay, so I just gave you a transition statement, right? I told you what we just talked about, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about next. I remind you. So eye contact, the first aspect of body language. Now, a lot of these things you already know, but I'm reminding you, and I want to tell you how, yes, thank you, so I don't trip and fall. You want to look at people, as many people as possible in the audience. Unless you've got hundreds of people. Did you notice I'm trying to look at all of you today? That's important because I'm connecting with you. And you don't want to always look down at your notes. You want to move around also to look at the facial expressions of your audience. How are they reacting to what you're saying? And then maybe you need to revise. Are they confused? Are they angry? Hopefully they're not angry. Maybe they're confused and they need some clarification about what you're saying. Maybe they're nodding in agreement, which I'm seeing a lot of today. But I'm getting that feedback. That's what I like about live communication, yes. Now you might want to practice to see if your friends notice when you make eye contact. When you're in a situation with one-on-one friend, do you look at each other? Do you notice if your friend's making eye contact, or is their eyes down in a phone? We know about the phone. We don't like the phone when we're going to meet a friend. We're going to put that phone down because it's offensive. And are you listening to me? So, but we want to have somebody pay attention to us. And I mostly want that too, especially if I'm speaking. I want to make sure that you're involved. So make pauses to change where you look in the audience. So I might pause just a moment so I can regroup and see where everybody is. Now, why is eye contact important? I already noted it just a moment ago. It helps your audience feel connected to you, all right? It helps your message sink in. It helps you show emotion and interest. You know, what's going on in my face? You can see my face. And it helps you develop empathy and concern. People are going to empathize with you and see that you have empathy and concern about them, that you want to help them become a better speech person, give better speeches. So eye contact is very important, but so is posture. And I'm not sure if I have notes about that, but so posture, ideally you want to stand up straight without slouching, shoulders back, which is going to also help you breathe better. If you're over like this, it's hard to get the breath out and you'll be tired. So you have to think about, where are my shoulders, pull them back, sit tall, stand tall, and it's going to make you appear more confident. And if you don't feel it, you're going to start feeling confident if you stand tall. Chest open, head held high, and look at the audience with a chin slightly lifted. Okay, not like that, but you know, like this. You know, I don't want to appear, but you know, just so you're not. So it just gives you a little bit more lift. Okay. You want to keep your feet shoulder width apart, okay? This is a good comfortable stance. Shoulder width apart. So in case you want to do a squat, Tina, we're just going to go squat. So if that would be your squat position, it provides stability and you look strong. You have a grounded stance. If I'm like this, you know, what do I show you? Nothing, okay? I just want to show you that I'm in control and that I'm feeling good about myself. And that's going to give you that feedback for yourself. So you want to face your audience directly. You don't want to be out the side. You want to look a little bit. Tina, am I moving too much today? Okay, good, because she told me don't move too much. And I'm thinking like, well, I can't do that. But, you know, ideally, if you're in a situation, if you're not even videotaped, it's great to walk a little bit. Yeah. And come in here. Hi. And then all of a sudden, if you were nodding off, you're getting tired of this, all of a sudden you're going to perk up. Okay? I've been there. I know that. Okay.
Let me say
Yes.
free. If you walk, they're going to catch you back here.
That's good. I'm okay with that. Okay, you want to avoid crossing your arms. You know, if you're cold, I'm sorry, that's a problem. You have, because even if you're cold, it also means you're closed off, right? You know that nonverbal behavior. So you appear defensive and you have to get used to being comfortable. Even if you're sitting at a table and you're talking at Barnes & Noble, are you going to be standing at Barnes & Noble or are you going to be sitting? I'm sure.
Both.
Okay, but you're going to keep your arms open. You look very approachable the way you're just sitting right now, actually. You just appear that way. But that's something to think about. You want to avoid also shifting weight side to side. If you're standing, just don't do this because you're nervous or you don't know what to do with yourself. Just sit still. Avoid looking down. No, don't look down too much and don't appear too rigid. Okay, just relax. So that means those deep breaths are going to help for that as well. And maybe do some jumping jacks before you come in. Yes?
The deep breathing with the diaphragm.
Yes.
Also, when you do that 2 to 3 times,
Yes.
it resets your nervous system.
Okay, good. For the, is it parasympathetic or sympathetic? Can't remember which one. I know, because I was just reading about that not too long ago. Yes, you're right.
You tell me.
So I think it's parasympathetic. It resets your energy and it just brings you down. It just, okay, I forgot one quote I was going to mention earlier. We're talking about speech delivery. That's with the vocal we talked about, and we're still talking about the body language. But speeches, I love this quote. Speeches are like babies. Easy to conceive, pause, hard to deliver. Okay? So, that's an old quote, but it's true. If you have created that speech idea, that's semi-easy part, but the harder part is delivering it, okay? So that's why we're talking about all these things today. So let's talk about gestures. We talked about posture. Gestures are as important. You don't have to be too expressive. It depends what your background is. Who's Italian here? Yeah, okay. And I'm Jewish, so same difference. But I'm very expressive with my hands. I can do it too much, though. And you don't have to do that. I'm overdoing this right now. You don't have to use your hands, but that's one way to emphasize what you're saying and be more expressive, and something for people to look at too, because you want to keep their attention, right? Like I said, I taught for 11 years, and the worst thing I didn't want to see, was my students falling asleep. So I was like, no, you are not bored in my class. So you don't want to bore your people. So gestures are also useful. Try to mix it up. Try to figure out, how can I use my hands, be natural. Think about how that would work with the way your body moves. You can use large gestures to illustrate size, shape, direction, and intensity. Okay, I mean, I'm sure you've seen speakers. Watch speakers. Have you ever done that? Go online and look on YouTube and see, well, you can see the great speakers like Martin Luther King. So if you try to incorporate gestures, whatever's comfortable, you don't have to appear robotic. It's going to make you appear more confident and energetic. You're going to appear warm and inviting to the audience. You're going to get a commitment, show commitment to your message, you know, that you're involved, that you love what you're talking about, okay, which I do. And you're going to make it easier for your audience to follow you. Facial expressions. This is, you know, everybody's got their thing. First of all, you have to make sure you smile, okay, here and there. A real smile, ones that go up to your eyes, right? No fake smiles, but smiling can help relax you and your audience, okay? You can raise your eyebrows a little bit to convey enthusiasm, surprise, curiosity, you know, anything that can be facially expressive. I don't know if you feel you yourself have an expressive face or not, only you know for sure, but you could talk to yourself in the mirror and look at yourself, or videotape yourself as well. Let's see. Once again, eye contact is very important. We're talking about the expression here. And be genuine. Avoid using your face to substitute for sincerity. And make sure you're not incongruent. Like you're saying something sad, but you've got a smile on your face, okay? So make sure it's appropriate. Yeah, I don't know. Mostly we would generally gravitate to the appropriate, correct facial expression. Also, try to avoid touching your face, especially in the COVID era, right? You guys have masks on, smart. Avoid touching your nose or your mouth or your chin or covering your mouth. You know, some people do that when they talk. It makes you appear insecure and nervous, but also people can't hear you. So, I mean, I think a lot of shy people do that. They might just feel, without realizing it, that they're touching their face when they're talking. So try not to do that. Now, as far as movement goes, if you're going to move a little bit in your speech, make sure it's planned and use it to highlight your key points. For example, right now I'm going to talk about movement, so I'm going to move a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 steps. Then I'll pause, and then I'll walk back when I feel ready. I don't have to be rhythmic about that, but variety is key for that. And so it does keep your audience attentive once they're writing little notes, but after a while, am I engaging you guys today? Do you feel like you're bored? No. Okay, good. Well, good answer. Good. Once again, you can use hand gestures, but you want to avoid pacing back and forth, like, you know.
You're nervous.
Yeah, don't do that. Excessive fidgeting. Try not to fidget with your clothes, even though my skirt was coming undone. I got that fixed right away. Don't rock on your heels. Okay. Now that we've talked about delivery of the speech with the vocal aspects and the nonverbal movement behavior, I'm just going to touch briefly on the outline, the speech outline. We already talked about the introduction, the top 5 aspects of how you do the introduction, and then once you get to that transition statement, then you can go into the body of your Okay. So you're going to come up, what's my first main point? What is the first thing I'm going to talk about with my book? Of your book, whatever it is you're going to be talking about. My assumption is you're going to be talking about your book, the book you want to sell, the book you're writing, the book you want to promote. Isn't that the case? So what is that first point you're going to talk about it? Is it the theme? I would imagine it's going to be the main theme, the main point of your book. Point it out briefly, but then your main point is going to be headache is not only a headache. So that's when you're going to get to some subpoints. This says evidence supporting the subpoint. This is very technical and dry, I understand. But, you know, what is that first main point? What is that first subpoint? What is that first point you want to say related to that first thing about the headache? All right? And then something else. Now, that could be a definition of what it is you're talking about or more details about that experience, okay? And then you're going to move onward. You're going to have another main point. You're going to get a transition from that first main point, and then you're going to get to a second point. So what is that transition statement you're going to make to say, okay, I've talked about this headache thing and how this all began. Now I'm going to tell you about how it affected my life in the years following that or in the weeks following that. So then you're going to have that more evidence to support that point, you know, specific detail, colorful detail. I mean, descriptive, if you will, as much as you can to, yes, but also to make it visual for us to imagine. So that's, yes.
For my particular book, I would ask a question. Like one of my books, Kindness Takes a Vacation. I would talk about kindness briefly, and then I would ask them, what would you do? What would your life be like without kindness in it?
I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
So I would ask a question.
Yeah.
Give them something to think
That's
about.
good. That's a good opener with the rhetorical question at the very, very beginning of your speech. I love it.
So that would be
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, attention getter. Rhetorical question.
I like spreadsheets and structures.
Okay.
Always been kind of nerdy. And I look at your speech and I see two main points. I see two main points. I see you're talking about speech structure and speech delivery. And you're using your structure that you have written with your two emphases are on what you say and how you say it.
Delivery. Yes, there could be much more. If we had a lot more time, we'd get into the content, you know, more about the exact, well, I'm trying to talk a little bit about it, but there's a lot more to giving the speech. I've taught semesters on this class. Yes, yeah.
English. I remember I had English 102, and that's why I'm looking. I'm like, I remember.
Yeah, it's similar. So, and there might be many points to your speech. I've only had two. But then ultimately, we're wrapping it up. You're going to transition to your conclusion, which means you're going to summarize what you just talked about very briefly, and then you're going to close somehow to let your audience know your speech is over. Well, thank you very much for listening to me today. I hope you read my book, or if you have any questions, please come and see me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want to ask any questions? I didn't stand up because I wanted you to stop. Do you have more?
Oh, not really, but I was wondering if she's clocking me out.
I'm not talking
So in the summary, you want to review those main points. So like I said earlier, you want to remind people what they heard. So that's a reinforcement of what you've been talking about. So they'll remember it. Because it's understood that we remember very little of what we hear.
That's true.
The percentage is very little. I think it was just the other day we saw it was like 25%. But if I'm repetitive in the things I'm saying, it's going to stick in my brain. And then you're taking notes, of course. But you might remember a little bit more if you hear it repeated several times. So I'm going to talk about those points again, briefly. Today I talked about this. and this and this. Today, me specifically, I talked about how to introduce yourself in a speech, how to get the attention, etc., but also how to use your voice to be effective, how to use your body and nonverbal behaviors to be effective, and then to practice a speech and have a great structure in order to be prepared and give a great speech. So in conclusion, you're going to create your own summary, and then you're going to create a closure. Thank you so much for coming to listen to me today. Remember, a headache is not always a headache, okay? And that could be the way you end it.